Good to see Samaritan Spurs still here, still doing the job, still providing healthcare services to the folks here in Westmoreland. And this is Dr. Campbell's constituency, Nora. Yes. Dr. Dayton Campbell. This is Eastern Westmoreland. And there's a lot of work to be done right around the horn. I was programmed by my producer to deal with a matter concerning, well, to lead into the broadcast today, because we're here in furtherance of our Hurricane Melissa relief and outreach efforts. Nationwide 90 FM has taken on the role of being the broadcaster of this Hurricane Melissa recovery effort. We've been on the road. We've been doing our small part. That continues today. Packages being unloaded from our vehicle. People gathering already. And they'll get their bag and they'll go. And then we'll be speaking to people from the various state agencies who have a role to play in the recovery effort. Because it's never a bad time to help your fellow Jamaican. And it's always a good time to show the humanness that makes us different from animals and inanimate objects. It's never a bad time to say, here, have this, you are welcome. So Chevron's wrap, Nora, will have to wait a little while because of what came through this morning. A statement from the Jamaica Hotel and Tourist Association that has me thinking, and I want to share it with the listeners, the viewers this morning. Nora, apologies for departing from your script. But the headline of the statement, it didn't make it in time for the news cycle at 6 and 7 on Nationwide this morning. It says, the JHTA rejects proposed increase in GCT on tourism activities. It reads, the Jamaica Hotel and the Tourist Association, JHTA, has adopted a firm and unified position rejecting the proposed increase in the general consumption tax on tourism activities, as outlined in revenue measures recently tabled in Parliament by the Honourable Minister of Finance and the Public Service, Favour Williams. The proposal indicates that effective April 1, 2027, providers of tourism activities would move from the current 10% GCT rate to 15%, a 50% increase. Significantly, he says, raising costs within the tourism sector. Although implementation has been deferred to the next fiscal year in recognition of ongoing recovery challenges, the JHTA maintains that any increase in GCT affecting tourism is untenable. You hear that line? The JHTA maintains that any increase in GCT affecting tourism is untenable. JHTA President Christopher Jarrett says, quote, the tourism sector is already operating in a highly competitive and cost-intensive global environment. Increasing GCT on tourism activities by 5 percentage points would directly impact pricing, competitiveness, and ultimately demand. The JHTA stands unequivocally opposed to this proposed tax increase. The association emphasized that the sector continues to navigate elevated operating costs, recovery pressures, and global market uncertainties. An additional tax burden at this stage would risk slowing recovery momentum and placing further strain on operators across the value chain, including these small and medium-sized enterprises that form the backbone of the industry. The JHTA further underscored that tourism is fundamentally an export industry earning foreign exchange for Jamaica, and it should be treated accordingly within the national tax framework. International best practice generally supports zero rating or exempting exports from consumption taxes. Historically, however, tourism has operated under a GCT regime that is inconsistent with this principle. In the context of broader tax reform, the association asserts that the treatment of tourism under the GCT system should be re-evaluated, not intensified. President Jarrett added, quote, our responsibility is to safeguard the long-term viability of this industry. Any policy that increases operational costs must be carefully measured against its impact on employment, visitor arrivals, and Jamaica's overall economic performance. We believe this proposed increase would have negative consequences across the sector. The JHTA confirmed that this position reflects full consensus among its membership chapters and tourism stakeholders, ensuring clarity and consistency in representation of the country's interests, of the industry's interests, beg your pardon. The association will continue to advocate for policies that promote sustainable growth, resilience, and global competitiveness within Jamaica's tourism sector. What a statement. What a statement from the JHTA. And even though you know how I think, listeners, viewers, I always look at things from the perspective of the stakeholder, because I've said repeatedly, life is about self-interest, and problems in life, not all of them, but many of them, germinate from situations where self-interests clash. This is one such situation where self-interests are colliding. So the government, on behalf of the people of Jamaica, proposes a move. The JHTA, in doing the business of its group of stakeholders, which is of course smaller than the group of stakeholders that the government is responsible for. The government is responsible for the whole country and all stakeholders therein. The JHTA only responsible to its small, its tiny, relatively speaking, group of stakeholders. Those self-interests are colliding in this issue, on this matter. That's how you have to look at these things. Otherwise, you're going to be ranting and raging at everything you see that you disagree with. So that is the basis of understanding, accepting that in life, self-interests will collide, that in life, self-interests collide often, and that it is a part and parcel of everyday life. Okay? Set that aside, because we accept that and we agree with that. Drill down into it now. Is the JHTA saying that in this time of crisis, in this time that a set of circumstances exist that have never been visited upon this country before, not in its independent history since 1962, not before, that in this unprecedented time, other sectors should carry the burden, but not them? Is that what the JHTA is saying? And obviously, some will say, no, George, that's not what we're saying. But how can you not be saying that when your leader issues this statement? Is the question I'm asking. So the rest of us and the rest of the business people who've been affected by taxes or who are going to be affected by taxes, and then all Jamaicans who will invariably be affected by the tax package and the projected takings that the government has penciled in under the various headings. We all must bear the burden, carry our share of the cross, because Holiness and his government are walking with a hell of a cross, and on the Calvary, them are going to go further than that. So they are walking with this cross, and the rest of Jamaica must put your shoulder to a piece of the cross and help carry it. But the tourism interests must sit in the shade, lemonade in hand, and give us moral support as we carry that cross. Is that what you're saying this morning, Mr. Jarrett? And the basis on which you say that, because that is what you're saying, based on your statement, is that in other countries, tourism activities as an export product, zero rated, and should be exempt from taxation. And the fact that you were paying 10, oh, by the way, for how long have you been paying 10% when other sectors have been paying 15? You had no problem with that then, obviously not. But now you've been asked to step up to 15. And you're behaving like Henny Penny, as if the sky is going to fall in. And I understand self-interest, Mr. Jarrett, as I've established before. But the ultimate question is, in these unprecedented times, where the country is carrying a collective burden, what right do you have and the players in the tourism sector to ask the rest of Jamaica to lift and walk with this cross, carry this burden, while you sip lemonade in the shade and encourage us to walk strong? What time is it? 10:17. Break time. Back with more after these. Agenda of providing assistance to people and bringing them closer to the people in government who are in charge of the services that can help these people get back on their feet. It's a difficult thing recovering from a hurricane. Developed countries, they say the average time, well, they say it's quick if it happens within 3.5 years, but it often takes far longer than that. So, a few months into this recovery effort in Jamaica, criticism has to be managed. Yeah, and frustrations abound, but at the same time, we have to be reasonable about how well we expect everybody to get their home back, everybody to get back on their feet. It's going to take a long time. Yeah. At the same time, we have to keep the government on its toes. We have to press them. We have to exert pressure where pressure is necessary. No free rides here as people struggle. Yeah. But at the same time, we have to be reasonable. And on the point of being reasonable, what is true is that taxes will have a damaging effect on pricing and competitiveness. All the things Mr. Jarrett pointed out. And the other thing that is true is that governments have a tendency, once they levy taxes, to not roll them back even when things get better in the economy. It's a fact. Across generations, across countries, across regions of the world. It's what governments do. So you can understand why stakeholders bawl when there's an adjustment, unfavorable adjustment in their tax arrangements. Because I must say, yeah, well, even if we get back to equilibrium, you're not going to remove this tax. And when the taxes were levied, I mean, Favour Williams hasn't spoken in the budget debate, it hasn't started. So she hasn't said for what time or after what point they review. So you can understand Mr. Jarrett being spooked. And I'm trying my best to understand Mr. Jarrett because of the value of his statement. There's so much to disagree with just on the strict reading of the statement, because the statement reads like a response from a stakeholder group in an environment where an economy is struggling because of bad management. The finances have fallen apart because of bad management. And to fix or to hide its bad management, the government then turns around. And rather than get its house in order so that public investment in infrastructure development and capital projects can run apace, and that private sector doesn't have many obstacles in their way as they look to do business and hire people, rather than do that, the government just raises taxes. That's what the statement reads like. The statement is ignorant of the reality facing Jamaica. There's not a word in the statement that makes any allowance for the unprecedented nature of the disaster recovery facing the government. Nothing. It's as if it's a tax measure imposed in normal times. And so you have to write a strong statement and reject it. All right, Mr. Jarrett, so the JHTA rejects it. What happens come 2027 when it's levied? And oh, that's another point again. You're being given a year to get your house in order, a year to do some recovery. Clearly, a year won't put many properties back to where they were, and the sector won't be as productive. It won't be as, the word in my head is a word I don't want to use because then I'm going to have to give a definition for it, but it's what I'm thinking. Fecund, F-E-C-U-N-D, prolific, producing many offspring. It's not as fecund as before. It's restricted in what it is producing, obviously because of the disruption caused by Melissa. So these are the times we're operating in. And the JHTA comes out with a belligerent statement, a capricious statement as well. Almost warlike in a decent way. In a time when a government is struggling to find revenue to plug the gap that exists. When you look at every area that is being taxed, I'm sure everybody will tell you that, well, we don't agree with the tax and we wish that we weren't. But how many of those sector leaders have put out a statement as fighting, as belligerent as this one from the JHTA? I think the JHTA statement is borderline vulgar in context. It's as if the things we know about the Melissa damage, the things we know about the cost of the Melissa damage, the things we know about the huge gap that exists between available financing to the government and the expected spend to get us back to equilibrium. It's as if those things that we know are not known to the JHTA. Somebody go into that room where the JHTA sit and turn on the light, please. They're in darkness. This is an attack on a position, on a vulnerable country where finances are not just shaky, the finances have in some cases collapsed. And with the forward planning and the instruments that we were able to design and the way the economy was being managed up to Melissa, we got a leg up on the pony. How a horse runs in a race, you have to run with certain equipment. Horse has to have a bridle. There has to be a saddle. The horse has to have a bit between its teeth because that's how you control the animal. So the government gets a leg up. It needs a saddle. It needs a bit. It needs a halter. It needs a girth strap. And these are the things that the government is looking around and saying, okay, this area can help. That area can help. It's not punitive. None of the taxes levied across any of the areas are intended to punish the people in those areas. It's just where the resources can come from. Now, I wish that the government held to its word and was not taking money out of the NHT. Of course, I wish that, like so many people. Professor Floyd Morris from the PNP for one. But where does there exist resources that can help in this time, in this emergency? And that's the question. And I just have a problem with sector leaders looking at us, writing fancy words on paper, motivated by a need to show controlled anger, being belligerent in your use of words, and what you're communicating. We don't want to help with the recovery effort because that's exactly what this JHTA statement is saying. Mr. Jarrett and his members are telling us this day, we don't want to help. Every other sector can help. We don't want to help. We don't want to innovate. We don't want to partly absorb, partly get back some of what we're going to spend on GCT from the clients. We don't want to competitively price. We don't want to do that. Because how in God's name in this statement can you talk about the industry really ought not to be taxed in the first place? In these times, Mr. Jarrett? Are you tone deaf, sir? And when you circulated this draft among your membership, your members said, yes, send that on our behalf. I sometimes I wonder, you know, I struggle sometimes. I struggle sometimes with understanding people. There's nothing wrong in saying, boy, in 2027, you've given us a year to prepare. It's going to have a deleterious impact. It's going to squeeze us. We're in an ultra-competitive industry. Tourists may say, well, a vacation in Jamaica is too expensive based on the fact that we're going to have to recoup the taxes that you're asking us to pay additionally. But, you know, we wish that wasn't happening. And we want the minister in her budget presentation to tell us for how long this will last and what other areas of reprieve can the government provide that can help us to carry this additional burden of 5 percentage points more for the time being until we get back to equilibrium and we can go back to a 10%. Say that. You're a smart man, Mr. Jarrett. Intelligent guy. And you have intelligent people around you. But what use intelligence if you do not use it in those circumstances where it has to be applied? And don't the JHTA members feel proud of themselves on this day in sports, Friday, February 20, 2026, sending a message like this to the country that everybody else must help the Melissa recovery. but not us. What a thing. Break time here on Cliff Hughes and Land. Back with more after these.